Hello guys, I'm Super Ron. Welcome back to the G Unit and welcome to episode 8 of my GBS build. I think the next thing I'm going to do on the car is to start making the engine wiring loom and connect all that up. But before I do that, I need to know where everything is. So I think we need to continue with the dry build, get everything in its right places, all the components, where everything's going to plug into, and then I can build the wiring loom to its correct places so everything will be the right length. So let's just have a little recap of where we got up to. So in the last segment of doing the dry build, we got most things together. All the front suspension, steering, brakes are all connected as they should. And as you saw in a previous video, it is now officially a roller. The engine is fully mounted in. I made the engine mounts for the C20XE red top engine. And in the last episode, I made up the exhaust system. So that's all fitting in nicely. The gearbox, the Sierra Type 9 gearbox, is all mounted on the original GBS 0 mounts. So that's what gave me my datum of where the engine sat. The Sierra steering column and Sierra master cylinder and bits are all bolted in. We've got all the rear end in. The Sierra LSD with all the bolting shafts, hubs, rear brakes. All the rear suspension is all fully mounted. All the rear suspension, the coilovers, the steering, all mounted up. So I just need a few more components to bolt on. We need to work out where the alternator is going to go, because as I mentioned before, it should go under the throttle bodies there, right where that bar is. So I think we're going to move it down to this side. But I need to get the thermostat housing for the coolant sensors. I need to get the oil pump on, front pulley so we can decide where the alternator is going to go. And a few other bits and pieces. So let's get mocking up. So you saw me raiding the Astra spares there. So we've got the starter motor, got the alternator. We've still got this tiny Kubota alternator that I might still use because that'll be a huge size saving and that might fit in there a bit better. We've got the water pump, backing plate. We've got all the little bits for the cam belt cover, mounting and the pulleys. We've got two options for the lower pulley. We've got the early V-style belt or the later multi-rib belt. See which one of them we use. We've got the thermostat housing, a few covers, bottom pulley. We've got the Z20 let high flow oil pump. Probably just going to use this old one for the mock-up, keep that one wrapped up. I've also got the oil cooler off the Astra. I'm not sure whether I'm going to use it or not, whether this is going to need it, because it's not going to be under a lot of stress, but it will be revving high, so I'll see if I will use the oil cooler. I've got it here if I do need it. And that's also got a temperature sender in the line. We've got the old rear pipe off the Astra, but that's for a front wheel drive, so I won't be needing that. The only bit I can't find is the rubber Y pipe that goes from the back of the water pump up to the head that goes through the throttle bodies and then round to the radiator at the front. So that'll be a bit different way round to how my front wheel drive setup was. But I got a message from a subscriber telling me that they do a Manta GTE. A company makes a silicone one that'll bring it right round to the front. So hopefully I'll get in contact with them and that'll do two jobs in one, getting a radiator pipe right to the front and find that missing Y pipe. So let's get some of this mocked up so I can start getting things in the right place. So here's everything bolted back on. Got the bottom pulley, water pump, back plate. Got all the fixings all in place. We've got the thermostat housing on with the 2 temperature senders, one for the ECU and one for the gauges. We've got the starter motor all in place. So you can see that through there. And we've got the alternator bracket on, the original Vauxhall one. And as you can see, there's not enough room above the bracket to fit the alternator. Even the smaller one just is not going to fit. So the plan is to move over to this side, common on Westerfields, because there are some nice bosses to bolt onto where the old power steering and air conditioning would have gone on the Vauxhall. So let's start looking into that. So we've got this bracket on. This is a second attempt because the first one, I made it between the 2 holes, but when the alternator was on, that was way too far back to line up with the pulleys. So I've made another one with a lot wider bar, and that means I can now make the bracket for the bottom alternator mount. But what I need to find out is whereabouts to get it exactly in line with the pulley, because if these are misaligned, it will just keep throwing belts all the time, and that'll be no good. So these have a twin bottom pulley on the standard Astra or Cavalier, one for the alternator and one for the power steering pump. As we're not going to be running the power steering, we can get rid of this one. So what I think I'll do, I'll put this on the lathe and take this front one off, and that will give us a nice flat edge then where I can get straight across and line them up perfectly. Then we can make the bottom bracket and mount the alternator over this side. So you saw me take the other pulley off there, and I've machined it down flat. I went right down so that now when that's on a flat face and this is on a flat face, the V is exactly right. So I can bolt this up to the crank, put a straight edge across here to the pulley, and I know they're going to be exactly in line. I just made up some little brackets on the end. I've put one washer just on the inside, just in case there is something wrong, and I just have to space it one way or the other. That just gives me that little bit of movement if I need it. So this is going to go on there somewhere like that. And because we've got our faces the same, I can put my straight edge across and now find out exactly where it's got to be. And there it is, tidied up. I took that top ear off because that wasn't needed, and that sits in there much better. Saved a bit of weight. So let's find a way of tensioning the alternator. So I've got some 12mm solid steel bar and some M8 rose joints and a lathe. So let's make up an adjuster. And so from bits that we had laying around, we've made this rather nice adjuster. They're M8 rose joints. And so when you wind it in and out, that's how you get the adjustment, tension in the belt. And then this one's got the lock nut on it. So what I'm going to do is bolt these on, but because they're both right-hand threads, I'm going to have to take one off. If I ever want to adjust the belt, I'll have to do it like this. I might make another one of these, because if I get a left-hand thread rose joint and a right-hand thread, all I need to do is crack the lock nuts off, and then when you rotate this, both will actually extend, which will be a lot easier to adjust. But we'll see how this goes. If I do get some left-hand thread rose joints, then I'll make another one. But for now, let's get this bolted on. The bottom alternator bracket is already an M8, so that screws straight in. And then on my top little bracket, that can just be a nut and bolt to tension the belt up. And a nice tight belt. And voila, we have the alternator on the passenger side. Really happy with how it's come out. Sits in there perfectly. I raided my dad's stash of V-belts and we found this one that fits in there perfectly. It's off a Ransom's lawnmower. That sits in there nicely. You saw me make up the little bracket and finish off the linkage for the adjustment. So again, that just bolts onto some existing bolt holes on the block. Now all this is really for mock-up purposes only, because the reason I got the alternator for free is because my uncle was replacing it on his tractor. So it's just for sizing up really. So I'm going to see if it can be repaired, or if not, they're not a lot of money to buy a new one. Now I've got all the brackets and know everything fits, but I'm really pleased with it. Everything's dead in line, so we're not going to have any belt issues or anything popping off. And the same, we're a bit on, just for mock-up purposes with the pulley, I took off way more than I actually needed to, just to get the two pulleys the same thickness to make sure they line up. So I'm a bit worried about the harmonic dampener, the rubber centre, how hot it got on the lathe. So I may find another pulley or get an alley one. If I do find another Vauxhall one, I'll just take the lip off and that's all it needs to be. But all in all, very happy. And so unfortunately, once again, we are out of time. I'm really happy with progress in this episode. I've been getting my hands dirty. It's been a great fabrication episode. We've had welding, we've had lots of lathe work, and I'm really pleased that we've got the alternator fully mounted. All the adjustment is in there, everything's in line, so we're going to have no belt jumping off issues, and all the adjustments there, so we've got servicing in the future. Everything's getting in the right place now to where we can wire it up to. We've got the alternator, we've got the starter motor on the other side, and we've got the standard Vauxhall crank sensor, which will go straight in. The injectors are going to sit in the throttle bodies. I haven't got injectors yet, so I'm just going to put some mock-up ones until I decide what we're going to use. We've got the coolant temperature senders for the engine, so we're getting together now. Everything I need to wire up to the Mega Squirt ECU is all in its right places. So I've been out shopping, I've got all the wiring that I need, I've got the crimps, the heat shrink, all the plugs for the injectors, I've got some braid, I've got some conduit, so everything's ready. But one more thing I do want to do before we start making the lube is I've got to decide where the ECU is going to go. Ideally, I'd like to put it under the scuttle panel, so it's just out of the heat, out of the rain, even though it is a waterproof item. And then I've got, from the Tiger Loom, I've got the fuse box and relay box that I'd also ideally want to put under the scuttle, just so it's out of all the debris and the heat and the rain and the wetness, just to give it a little bit of safety under there. So I think in the next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to get the scuttle on. Because it's a GBS chassis and the MNR Vortex body, we're going to need to do a bit of adjustment forward and backwards because the steering column isn't in the same place as on the MNR. And on the MNR, they don't have a master cylinder at the top. They have cylinders down low. So I'm going to have to do a bit of cutting, measure 6 times, cut once, make sure it all fits in there really nice. And also, I'll probably be getting the radiator in because we need to wire the radiator fan and the temperature switch, and also the horn's going to be at the front. So probably in the next episode we're going to be working to get the scuttle on, we can get the nose on and make sure that fits all around the radiator. The other thing I want to find out is if the top fill radiator of the Escort is going to be high enough, or whether I'm going to need a header tank at the back as well. So once that's mounted on, I'll see. So we've got lots of action that's going to be going on in the next episode. So if this is your first time viewing, make sure you subscribe to get that. And I really do appreciate the people that are subscribed already. You give me some great tips and some great hints. Like I said earlier, a subscriber called Wayne gave me the hint about the silicone pipe that's actually made for the other side. So instead of having lots of joiners to the water pipes, to the radiator, to the bottom of the inlet, the company actually makes a silicone hose that will all do that in one. So that will, the more joins you have, you've always got the maybe cause for a leak. So less joins the better. So that'll be one piece, and that'll do a really fantastic thing. So anything else you see or you notice or you like, make sure you let me know in the comments, because I do read them all and they are really handy and they get morale up and get me boosted to get on to the next stage of the build. But I'm super happy with how it's progressing. And if you like what you see, make sure you do like the video, because I'll keep watching the graphs and we'll keep going up and up. And by the time we do get round to the Astra, I think we're going to be quite a big channel, which will make the project even better. So I'm going to have a little bit more thinking about where everything's going to go. But until next time, make sure you have fun.